Number one is Acosta. Number two is Brian or Stacy Aller. Then number five is Bradshaw, Caroline, and April. And then number seven is Austin. So we'll get those guys going, and then
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Acosta. First off, thank you for your time and transparency with this project. I'm currently working and have a brother going to school in this district, and I have talked to multiple staff and parents about the boundary change. One of the concerns was over custodians and cafeteria workers. Would they be able to keep the same position they have at their original schools as a day shift worker in another school? If this huge change comes to them, it looks like they might be going back to a position they worked hard to get out of. And another concern from both parents and staff is about farmer kids out in Plymouth. How long is that drive going to be to get into town to a different school? I think a lot of like what our parents are saying is that it seems like too fast of a change for them.
thank you. Aller, Stacy or Brian is number two. Then Bradshaw is number five. Then Austin is number seven. Then behind them will be Harris. So we'll let Mr. Aller speak. Brian.
Thank you. So, my name is Brian Aller. My wife teaches at Plymouth. So, we're very passionate about Plymouth. Some of the things that I think the board needs to consider, if you read the district's mission statement, that improving student outcomes as a model district, and part of their culture statement is decisions are made with students' best interest as their highest priority. I was reviewing some of the board meeting notes and presentations about all this reconfiguration study last night, and I found some interesting comments about some of the proposed changes, and I found several places where the possible negative outcomes were decreased student learning. They talk about the fact that the one-track schools, the smaller schools, have better learning outcomes. To me, we ought to be building more of those. It's part of culture, you know. At Plymouth, those sixth graders, they hang out with the kindergartners. It's family, and that's what matters. There's no bullying, there's no fighting out there. And, you know, another concern that came up, I didn't see any data that showed how much money we're going to save by closing schools. But I did see we were going to spend some extra money to renovate some schools. So I found a survey that the state of Kansas did in 2017, I believe. It was an audit. And they talked about Jenny Barker had 129 students. We should close that school. The amount of savings that they were going to have was about $360,000 maybe, when they considered the fact that they have people leave the district. Those savings went down to less than $250,000. So to me, I don't really think it's worth it personally. What else? Oh, the data shows that Plymouth, Jenny Barker, the one-track schools are our highest achieving schools. They get awards. I'm sure all the schools have a lot of good things going on, but why would we consider closing our two top performing schools? Those should be our models. Then lastly, my last comment is kids are more than data and percentages. They're people, their lives matter. I think we should remember our
Thank you, sir. Caroline or April Bradshaw, please. And then after Bradshaw will be Austin, then Amy Harris, and then Kate. It's got an H. Shula, maybe.
Good evening, everyone. My name is April Month. My last name is Bradshaw. I am so thankful to be here today. I'm thankful that you all have given us this time and this space to be able to speak to so many passions that all of us have about our children, about our communities, and why we all have concerns. I just had I have actually a lot of questions, but I'm going to condense mine to kind of my field. My focus is mental health. I am in psychology. I have my doctorate in nursing, so that is kind of my focus is mental health. A lot of us have been impacted by COVID. We've seen our children impacted by COVID with the mental health, the suicides, the anxiety. And before COVID, our children were already struggling with anxiety and stress, especially with social media. And certainly when COVID hit, we saw that with the school closures, with the schools not having the teachers, with the schools not being able to provide that social outlet for our children and even our staff. So my concern is if we are making these transitions so quickly and so fast, what will the impact be on our children, the mental health of our children? Is that going to impact their anxiety? Is that going to impact their stress? We are already in stressful times. We can turn on the news at any time and say, oh my goodness, what's going on over there? What's going on in our world right now, even in our own country? So my imploring today is that we just take a moment to pause and say, you know what, why do we have to rush this? Can we just take a moment to, I know we are taking time to get input and community input, but really take the time to look at how this will impact our emotional and mental well-being of our community and especially of our children. So thank you so much for allowing me this space.
Austin lives on South Stone Road. After Austin be Harris, Kate Hushla, Rebecca Swindler. Be after that individual.
Thanks. We had pretty deep discussions. Our group kind of looked into everything before we come, so we had a little bit different questions, but the biggest thing that stuck out to us was we go through a program and a study like this, and the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, it's population control. And like we said earlier, there are kids, there's families, there's miles, there's fuel, there's a lot of stuff to it, but we lose about 65 kids a year, and I didn't see anywhere where they're going. I don't know how many were homeschooled. I don't know how many are going to Ingalls or going to Holcomb, or we don't see any of that. There's some control what you can control factors, and we haven't seen that either. So if it costs X amount of dollars to fix a school, if that's a reason to close it and move it, okay, what's some of the trim the fat things that we can talk about? What are some of the cost things that we can manage in front of us rather than going to a city or county, hey, raise taxes, or some of those things right in front of us we can get before it's just move the city blocks, move the miles, move the kids. Another thing was just general infrastructure. I don't know how to involve the city, I don't know how to involve the county, but my kids aren't in school yet, but we'll go to Plymouth. We got 4 of them under 5. We like Plymouth because there won't be much traffic. But if you move some of that to people who live around these schools, that'll be kind of a nightmare. You live next to a great school where you live, and there'll be 2-mile-long row of cars and kids going around everywhere. So just from a safety factor, we didn't feel like that made a lot of sense. We talked about, just like was brought up earlier, some of these schools performance-based are just a little bit better than others, and I'm not a part of all that, but that's just the questions as a parent whose kids we don't know where we're going to go. That's stuff that kind of gets brought up. So those are just mainly questions that our group talked about, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. On the Stanley, make sure English and Spanish is up here. Make sure and fill that out. And then, like I said, you can give that to us, Austin, and then we can have that, or you can put it in the digital format so we can have that for the next 10,000 years. So Amy Harris is next, then Kate, then Rebecca, then Ms. Timpson.
All right, like my name is Amy Harris. I have been in the district for 26 years. I have taught both at Horace Good and at KH. I'm going to express some concerns that our whole faculty as a whole have done in the last couple days. We've been putting this together. It is a compilation, that's what I need. Compilation of over 27 of our faculty, and we do have the signatures to show that this is what we all think, it's not just me. We have a 3-page document here of things that why we would like to see KH stay as a middle school. Biggest thing we know, large schools have more discipline problems. We compare our percentages of discipline referrals to Horace Good, and it's much smaller, and it's mainly because of the size, the culture. Most of our teachers know a majority of our students. If you go to one big middle school, we're not going to know. Maybe the kids that you have in your classroom know. There's so many kids, you're not going to be able to call on kids that you don't even have. It's going to be an issue that it just causes more problems. I know that they've talked about academics, culture, economics. It seems like it's counterintuitive to go to one school. Academics, just a lot of issues with that. We'll get to those in a second. Culture was our biggest contributor that a lot of our teachers wanted to talk about. Consider that students who feel like they are truly a part of their school versus students who blend in with over 1,200 students. That's something to consider about going to one middle school. I feel at KH we do a good job at building relationships with our students. Once again, it'd be a little bit harder with the bigger school. Teachers and students have good relationships. The kids need to feel included and valued. Smaller schools give that. Also, let's see, economics. A lot of our faculty is worried about if we do combine the schools. They're telling us that everybody will keep their jobs. It just doesn't seem possible. We were talking in our group about classified staff. We have a whole set of nutrition. We have a whole set of custodians. We have a whole set of secretaries in both buildings. How is that going to work when they combine it? Not all of them, I feel, will have a job. Or will they be moved to another job that they, don't really feel comfortable or qualified for? Same as teachers. We have so many science teachers. Are we going to take all the science teachers and put them into one school? Or are some of them going to have to take some of the long-term positions that we have now, just so they can keep a job? Okay? They were talking about the percentages of where we are. Currently, KH is around 78 to 79%. If we move, they even showed them, and you can see this on the statistics. If we move to one school, one middle school will be at 94%. That's exactly what we don't want. If we go to both schools, if 2 middle schools, both schools will be from between 82 to 89%. That's what we're looking for. We also feel going to one school, safety is going to be a big priority for our students. We talked about if JDA has our 6th graders, they're going to be traveling back and forth to like the library, to the cafeteria, to art, to any other special rooms that they go to. They're going to be traveling in outside the school. Many years ago, we had the modules at the high school, and we had some at KH, and we had some in other buildings. We decided to get rid of those because those were a safety hazard. We're putting ourselves right back into that by having them travel between the 2 buildings. I do have so many more things, and I know I only have 5 minutes. So, if anybody is willing, and I have some extra copies of some of the comments that our faculty has talked about. Like I said, we have 12 different points of why we should stick to 2 middle schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Hushler, and then Rebecca, then Ms. Jensen, then Samantha Payne, and then Sean Pelham, what it looks like.
Hi, I'm Kate Hushka. My son currently goes to Jenny Barker. And I obviously have some concerns about this and the money to close it. Why are we closing the 2 rural schools that are at max capacity versus 1 to 2 of the in-town schools that are only at 44%? You can combine those 2 schools and get to your 70%. Jenny Barker and Plymell, as a study I found on the Kansas website, are higher in test scores. So why are we closing the 2 schools with the higher test scores? And then we also need to consider, what's the traffic gonna be like? I personally have picked my son up in a semi because I needed to go to the elevator and drop off some grain. Who wants to be stuck behind me in town on Mary Street? Guarantee you, none of you. So we also need to consider the traffic and how many people are going to start going out of district to avoid all that extra traffic. Also, all the parking stinks at every school, no matter where you go. And we're going to add that many more kids and make it that much harder. So I do think there are some other things to consider besides shutting down your rural schools. Also, there's the busing. My son's already on the bus for an hour because we live 30 miles northeast of town. So how long is it going to take for him to get home? When he's already on the bus for an hour, you're adding more kids and a farther distance. So what, we want these kids to get home at 6 o'clock, eat dinner, go straight to bed? That's not okay. So you need to consider these things and maybe find a different way to move some kids around.
We have Rebecca as she comes up, Ms. Timpson, then Samantha Payne will be next, and then Sean Pell will round it out.
I think I have more notes than I can fit into 5 minutes. We'll see what I can do. I do want to start by things that we support here. Understand that the Boundary Study Committee started out with very good intentions to reallocate students to, optimize capacity. So we do support K through 5th grades, 6th through 8 together, 9 through 12. We support 2 middle schools, as you discussed that. But then there are a lot of things that we just don't agree with, kind of in the scenarios and then the process here. First of all, as 76% of the Boundary Study Committee voted against closing country schools, yet we're not given that option to discuss here tonight. It doesn't look like Boundary Study Committee really has a fleshed out idea of what that would look like to keep those 2 schools open financially, where students would move, whatnot. So we'd like to see that option presented, where we keep those 2 open, and then financially and enrollment-wise at the other schools. If you don't give us that option, then really we don't have a voice to support it. The next one is, in that presentation, there's data on the one-track schools and the smaller schools. I think that's kind of backwards. The one-track schools, those schools are performing better, you can see that. We do have a better student, or we have very high-performing student leadership teams, we have great parent involvement. So that page 8, I think it's backwards. Mr. H from Plymell presented on how much collaboration we have among classrooms. And it's true if you go out and look at it, but that's not what page 8 says. Next. I think RSP is maybe looking just at total number of students in schools, but not the classroom sizes after they switch. So, for example, if we look at Plymell moving into Alta Brown, I don't think they have the right number of open classrooms from what I'm hearing from teachers and administrators from those buildings. I don't know how they would fit 5 new classrooms into Alta Brown. Next, there's no financial data presented. I know that a lot of this has to do with saving money, but we will have to spend money to reconfigure those schools. We will have to spend additional on transportation. How are you gonna, you're changing the buildings. You're making a middle school down into elementary and vice versa, but bathrooms, like the size of the toilets and in the bathrooms, and whether you have athletic facilities at those buildings, that's gonna cost money. What does it cost to retire a school? Are you gonna tear it down? Are you gonna sell it? What are you gonna do? We don't have any of that data presented to us. Also, I've heard that, and I found it in the board notes, that about a month ago, the district purchased the land across the street from the high school for about $700,000. What is that for? I mean, are we just trying to prevent commercial development there? Is there a good reason for that we spent that much money? Are we going to build another facility? If so, why? Why are we retiring school buildings and then potentially planning to build across the street? I'm not sure. I think we at least need an answer on that one. And then my last point was, the wish is to disrupt fewer than 50% of the students. In the slides, it shows 49% of the students are disrupted, but that only shows K through 3rd grade. I bet a lot of the 4th through 6th graders. So we don't even, in this hybrid model that you're showing, you don't show how many students are disrupted in the district. So, thanks.
Jackie Timpson, please. And then Samantha, and then Sean Pelham. We'll round it up.
Okay, I feel like I don't have much to add because everybody else has already said it, but if I have a chance to talk into a microphone, I'm gonna take it. I don't think you guys are gonna have any pushback from the community on a K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12 format. I think that's what we wanted all along. The 5th and 6th grade centers have been atrocious and a problem from the start. Putting 5th grade back into elementary will likely increase enrollment in a lot of those and spread it out. I think this is part of the reason why a lot of these smaller schools are desirable. We don't want to send our kids to the 5th and 6th grade centers. I do think that enrollment probably will continue to decline if things move forward as they're presented, because nobody wants that. But the one thing that will not change, and several people have alluded to it, is the agricultural aspect of Finney County. We are the 2nd largest county in Kansas with 1,303 square miles. And it needs to be considered the amount of distance people have to travel if you're going to push them into town. We used to have schools out farther. The outlying schools are incredibly important to our community, regardless of what kind of growth happens. And I think that those things highlight the disconnect in the data presented and the claim that there's local knowledge and experience. For one, we don't use a lot of national builders. We're not bringing them in. We use local builders and local businesses. The live births versus K enrollment, those numbers are pretty steady, and the gap is pretty steady, considering that a lot of people come into Finney County to have babies and never plan to enroll their kids here. It's just how it is because of where we're situated. I think some more consideration maybe needs to be done onto why there is such an out-migration from the school district, and maybe the timing of when those started spiking. I don't think it's a good solution to look at where the potential growth is and then close the schools directly where that potential growth is. That doesn't math to me, but yeah. There's a lot of disconnect between the data presented and what we're hearing from the community and the committees, that these aren't the wishes that people have represented. This isn't the feedback that they were given, and none of these concepts represent what our community actually asked for.
Samantha Payne, and then Sean Pelham.
Hi, I'm Samantha Payne. I have 2 kids currently in elementary school with 2 more on the way. My husband and I grew up in Southwest Kansas and chose to return to Garden City because we love this area and we wanted to raise our kids in this environment. I was a part of the boundary committee, or I have been a part of the boundary committee. I've been a part of all the meetings, and so there's just a couple of things that I felt like needed to be addressed that maybe has been left out of some of the information you guys have received. So throughout this process, various data points have been presented. Which, you know, building utilization has been the key metric that the board or the committee has been given, with that prime range being set between 75 and 85%. And presently, if you look at the data, Plymouth is the only elementary that meets that criteria, with Jenny Barker being at 130%, but still heavily utilized, and many of our town elementary schools in town being underutilized by 15% or more. During our initial meeting, we addressed several questions, and some of that you guys have heard. For example, the majority of the committee did support 2- and 3-track schools. It is acknowledged that like a uniform 1-track school system just isn't feasible for a town our size. However, the committee was also asked, could rural schools be smaller to minimize transportation for students residing in those areas? 76% of the committee endorsed this idea, and RSP gave us some standards. So above 50% is great, above 75% was even better. And so when we attended our third meeting, and given the two concepts, the lack of a plan that puts the country schools remaining open came as a shock to many people. The board has emphasized a need to consider the fiscal obligations, and yet we have not been given financial data as a committee to consider. And I feel as a committee member, we've been placed in a pretty tough position because of this. In 2017, and I know Mr. Aller touched on this, the district was chosen to participate in an efficiency audit. A rep from Topeka came out and they looked for ways to increase operational efficiency and improve the effectiveness of our fiscal standing. One way that the audit recommended we save money was through the closure of Jenny Barker, citing that the building's enrollment was declining. Look where we are just 6 years later. At the time, the school board and district administration chose not to pursue the closure of the country schools for several reasons. These included concerns about the loss of funding if parents opted to enroll their children elsewhere, recognition of the value parents placed on rural education offered by these communities, or by these schools, insufficient community support for closures, and the anticipated increase in transportation time and costs. Additionally, maintaining smaller class sizes was a priority outlined in the district's organizational plan, and closing schools would have been counterproductive to this objective. Looking ahead, like I said, I'm going to have a kid in the elementary schools for the next decade, and so I'm concerned about rushing into a decision that's going to in fact impact my family and others several times, potentially over the next 10 years. Thanks for listening, and
So round out the night on public speaking, Sean Pelham.
I want to thank everybody for giving me time to talk. My 8-year-old goes to Jordan Matthews. My 2-year-old is getting ready to go to elementary, I think next year or the year after. They both have special needs. Friends that couldn't be here tonight had kids in the same school. My son goes to school, gets out at like 3:50, don't get home until almost 5 o'clock. He goes to bed at 7 every night. The issues he has with routine change, what are we going to do about that? I mean, I understand, been told the program's going to go to a different school, teachers may or may not follow. With the routine changes, what are we going to do about that? The travel, as people have already mentioned. I mean, I don't want my son on a bus for 2 hours. We live out in the county. We're concerned with the school being shut down, that they're considering just because the program, the travel time, just how far my son and other friends' kids have come. Are they going to revert? You know, we don't want that. Causing more issues. I think we're, like everybody else has said, we're rushing too fast. We need to take more consideration. I mean, they brought up housing. My household makes $44,000 a year. A lot of these housings that are going up, over $300,000 houses, I can't afford that. I mean, some people may be able to. But how can I move closer to a different school if I can't afford it? That's why maybe people come to have kids and they don't say they can't afford to. I mean, if there's something that the school or the county can do about that to help maybe retain people or attract people, families to move here and stay here and enroll their kids in our schools. I'm not sure. That's just some of the concerns I know we have and friends have that have kids in the school system here. But I appreciate you guys' time.
Rob and Jenna or John, I don't know. Good. Anybody else? Dr. Rock, you got anything? Well, we thank you for your time, your input, definitely your energy. Please, 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 on the scan me, and then, okay, there's a question about the survey. Hang on 2 seconds.
On the survey, there's not a place to put any comments. So we're supposed to put all of our feelings and our thoughts in 200 characters. Is there not a way that can be expanded so we can?
Yeah, so on slides 3 and 4, there's open comment, but there's also on every page a comment bubble up at the top that you can do it more open forum. The survey does have a max of 200 characters. That's just the platform, but using hopefully, I think, those 4 different opportunities, you guys can put any comments in.
One more time, just in case you didn't hear that.
Yeah, so there's comment bubbles on slides 3 and 4 for some open forum questions, but also there's a comment bubble like icon on the top of slides 2, 3, and 4. That is also just, there's no prompt at all. There's just an opportunity to collect those comments. And it is locked at 200 characters, but that's just from the platform because we'll also be translating back into English, so they kind of cap it to make sure that the translation function works.
We can put that in some communication. Yep.
She said, can you put that into?
Yeah, we can send some communication about where the comment bubble is. Yep.
Any other possibles or any other comments? All righty, thank y'all so much for your time, your energy, your effort. We love you and there's nothing you can do about it. So there you go.